Thanks so much for joining me for episode 168 on the Happiness Happens podcast. Can you believe that there are so many episodes on this show? It honestly blows my mind when I think about it. And when people ask me about how many episodes I'm at, it really blows my mind that 3 years later, we are at 168 episodes and we're going strong. So, today's topic is one that is super important to think about. We're talking all about how to find that spark in your life. Joining me for this amazing conversation is Elena Sonnino. Her and I felt like kindred spirits when we first sat down to chat. She is such a light. She has such a spunk about her, and she is just so full of vibration. You are going to absolutely love this conversation. Before we get into the episode, I want to ask you, do you ever feel like the spark is missing in your life? Maybe that everyone else seems to be happier, seems to be more fulfilled, seems to be living a life that actually makes them happy every single day, except you're not? My guest, Elena Sonnino, is all about finding those little moments of joy to ultimately help us find our spark and live a happier life, even in the hardest of times. She's a life coach, yin yoga teacher, and author. And what most people say about her is that she brings a delightful spark of energy to everything she does. And I can attest to this after having had the absolute pleasure of interviewing her for the podcast. Elena is on a mission to help you transform the walls of survival mode into doors of possibility so you can step into the spotlight of your life as your most rooted and nourished self. Her work helps you get out of your head and into your body as your source of wisdom and moves you beyond the shoulds and into delight one day at a time. At home, Elena enjoys watching the sunrise, tending to her many plants, riding her Peloton bike, and impromptu kitchen dance parties. We're talking all about what happiness means to Elena, the power in always having a choice, what it means to have a sunrise in your pocket, why most people are waiting for joy to come, the 3 pillars of joy according to Elena, and the magic behind her book, Inhabit Your Joy, a book of nudges. Let's get into this incredible conversation. I know you will leave feeling so inspired and feeling that spark within you too. Let's get into it. Hello, Elena. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Hello, Simona. I'm thrilled and delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. We're going to have such a great conversation today. I can't wait to dive in and talk about all of the different things that my listeners are not even probably prepared for. No, I'm just kidding. It's going to be amazing. But my first question for you before we dive any further is, what does happiness mean to you?
Happiness to me is it's living life with the question, what would feel delicious? It's a deliciousness. It is to me, it's a state of being. And I tend to think of happiness as joy because happiness has like peaks and valleys, right? It can be a very big emotion, but it's really rooted in this, like allowing things to be delicious and delightful and to be felt in the heart, to have your heart stirred or touched. Like real happiness, those moments of, oh, happy that may not have even been big for me. Like I could feel them here. So yeah, that's what I would say. Deliciousness, delight, and touched or stirred in the heart.
That is a perfect definition of happiness, in my opinion. It kind of reminds me of something that I've been trying to practice a lot more intentionally, especially over the last year, sitting in those little moments of joy when they arise and not having to go and look for something outside of myself to find that joy, but really to be intentional about, if this is a really joyful moment, like honoring that and like being very aware of that. And then I feel like that just brings even more of that joy.
Yeah, it's that like savoring, right? I think about a cup of tea and I use, tea bags or loose tea, whatever it is, but the water, like it steeps, right? And so it gets really absorbed and becomes one with, and that to me is that feeling of being really present with it, just really filling up, and not in like a grippy way of trying to make it last longer, but just really being immersed. I don't know, did you ever do in probably maybe elementary school or junior high experiments with white carnations and food coloring?
I I don't know if I ever did it in school, but I feel like I did this in my life.
Right. Like you put a white carnation in water and you put food coloring in the water. The white carnation sucks up the color, and eventually the white carnation is now the color of whatever food coloring you put in. And so to me, like that's what it is. It's really allowing ourselves to absorb it, to become it in that moment and filled up by it.
I love this way that you're talking about it though, because it's almost like rooted into the present and letting the present be that specific thing that fills you up with that joy. That's the vibe that I'm getting here.
Absolutely.
I love that.
And those words are very much right. It's the rootedness of being present. And I think of it almost as nourishment, as allowing ourselves to be filled with it. So that if we think about a lot of the memories that we have of happy moments, they're likely memories, at least in my experience, that we can get back to through our senses, right? You can smell it, you can see it. You and I were talking before we pressed record about Italy. And, for me, thinking about Venice, Italy, which is where my family is from, I smell jasmine, right? I can like feel the sand underneath my toes from the island of Lido. So it's a very sensory experience, and so it's literally that being filled up with.
I love that. And I feel like that's things that we can find in every little moment of every day. And like, I'll give you an example. So I live in Canada. It is very cold here right now as we're recording this. There is a lot of snow. It feels like it's just kind of been snowing for a whole week. Like if I look out back, it's almost as high as my fence. Like it is so high. And I don't like the snow. Like I'm not a winter sports person. I'm not really sports inclined, if we're being honest. Like I enjoy going for walks and like, that kind of stuff. I have a hard time being in the present moment outside because I'm like, it's so cold. It's so cold. I just want to go in and I have a dog and then I got to walk him. You know what I mean? And it's all these different things.
I'm with you on it.
But it's crazy. But when I take a step back and take a look at the moment for what it is, I'll give you an example because I have a dog. He's a puppy. He loves to play and whatever. And the other day I was walking him and he started just bouncing from snow hill to snow hill. And I was like, but this is what it's about. You know what I mean? Like, it's not so much like, yes, it's cold and then I'll go inside and then I'll be warm, but it's about that moment in right here, right now.
Yeah. And what you just described in terms of like the dog jumping, right? And I have a Labradoodle who also now likes the snow, didn't love to, but I'm the same way. I'm like, please don't make me go out and walk in the cold. But it's that like the dog bouncing around, right? It's almost like that childlike sense of wonder, right? Just like being in it and like, ooh, and the pounding here. And so, it's that sense. And what I love about what you just said in terms of like, you don't love being outside in the cold, and that moment can still exist, right? I think one of the things that we often think of is like, oh, well, life can be hard, which is true. But that we then use that as an exclusion to feeling happy or feeling joy. But this reminder, what you just shared is like this one little moment. It doesn't exclude, it doesn't erase any of the other stuff or the fact that you don't like the cold, but you allowed this moment to like touch you. And it's almost, I think about it like a pin on the map of our life, right? Like this little moment happened. And that like, it's a collection of moments and experiences.
I feel like you've just hit the nail on the head with my definition of happiness. And so sometimes I read about happiness, I study about happiness, I learn about happiness, I have conversations about them, and I still find it so difficult to put it into words exactly what it means. But I think what you just said really hits it like nail on the head for me, because the whole point is to be happy, like you said, does not need to take away from anything else, or the hard moments, or the moments of grief, or the moments of sadness, or the moments where you would just wonder if everything is ever going to all work out. But it's about those like tiny, like you said in the beginning, little tiny moments of joy that weave themselves into your life. Because even if you have I hope I don't get flack for saying this example, but even if you've lost your job, okay, for example, and you're sitting at home and there's worry and there's fear. How are we going to pay the bills? How are we going to make ends meet? Like there's very real fear. Like that is a very terrifying situation to be in. But on the flip side, that maybe you're sitting down with your kids and they're so excited to show you their book. And it's about being intentional about, I think, in my opinion, choosing to like shift the focus to that particular moment. Do you know what I'm trying to say here?
100%, right? Well, I think a lot about, what are we illuminating? Like, what are we putting the spotlight on?
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there are those very real moments that are super hard and sad and scary and all of the things. I think that's actually one of those moments is kind of what taught me to celebrate joy, even in uncertainty, even in challenges, right? But it's deciding, okay, like that can happen. And I can also put the spotlight on this moment and let it fill me. And maybe if being filled up by it will help me navigate the hard thing. When we are so filled with something that feels good and touches us, to me, we're more empowered to navigate, to deal with the hard stuff.
And I
it
think
doesn't erase it.
Exactly. So I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I was going to say, I think that's exactly what people mean when they say, but you always have a choice. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, okay, I always have a choice in my emotions. Sure, I always have a choice. No, but you do. But it's also about having that awareness to even know that you have a choice,
100%.
Yeah.
And there are certainly times when that choice feels really hard to make for people, right? And certainly in moments of trauma and different things. And right, for in most situations, yeah, we do have that choice, right? It could be silly. It could be, delight or joy for a color that you see, or something, the picture that you walk by in your hall that you just haven't paid attention to. But it's almost allowing ourselves to be touched. There was a book that I read, I don't remember who the author was, the author talked about radical amazement.
Ooh.
And it was this idea of, could you allow yourself to be amazed by the most mundane of things? Right. And so it's a different way of looking at things and deciding, I'm going to be on the lookout. I'm going to choose to let moments fill me as opposed to always depleting me.
That's beautiful. Now, there's a concept that you talk about, and it's something that stuck out to me because I've never heard it defined this way. And I would love if you could share it with my audience, my listeners today. You call it sunrise in your pocket. And what is that? What does it mean?
So to me, the sunrise in your pocket is this element of aliveness, of curiosity, of possibility, of delight and of knowing that always lives inside you. And you literally carry it with you everywhere you go. And to me, it's this, and how a sciencey person is about to say to me, this isn't true, but we believe that the sun rises every day, right? We kind of know that to be a fact. We don't question it when it's cloudy, when it's snowing, when it's raining. We don't see the sun. We know that the sun has risen, even if we can't see it. So to me, this idea of the sunrise in your pocket is that sense of inner knowing that's inside you always, even when you're not sure you can see it, right? And it's connecting to that sense of self and intuition and power and radiance, so that you know that any decision that you want to make, anything that you want to be, that you have the core of that already inside you. So that's what sunrise in your pocket. And to me, I'm a sunrise girl all the way. Sunsets are beautiful, but give me a sunrise and that's my happy place. And you never know, right? Like sunrises can be big and bold and fiery and orange, or they can be like the candy at carnivals, whatever.
Cotton candy.
Cotton candy. Thank you. I was like, that thing, right? Or it can be cloudy. And so it's that reminder that every single morning we get to be curious about what the sunrise is going to look like. And so we can also have that element of curiosity for ourselves to consider, right? This who we're becoming, this how we're going to inhabit our truest self, but from that sense of knowing that it's already inside of us and that we don't need to seek it outside of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I love that. I feel the same way, but with sunsets. I love myself a nice, beautiful pink and orange sunset. And when the sun is like big and beautiful and orange, oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Now, I
Yeah.
have a question for you. So, I mean, this is in concept, it's great, right? But how does someone start to make a shift from where they are right now into this mindset and into being able to live their life like this, right? Because I don't know if you feel this way, but do you sometimes feel that maybe people are waiting for that joy to come?
Oh, 100%. They're waiting for it. They're procrastinating it. They're outsourcing it, right, to others. And look, I do it too. I catch myself often. We'll go with that. So, I mean, yes, right. It's a great, you're right. It's fabulous concept, but how? So to me, it's the reminder that it's, to start with, it's a practice. It's not a light switch, right? We're not going to be able to flip the switch on and be like, okay, I am now the sunrise in my pocket, right? To me, it is about, we go back to that choice idea, and it starts with a choice to decide that there is more to life than kind of that just getting by, that survival mode, the hamster wheel, the procrastinating, the outsourcing, the waiting for somebody else to bring us how we want to feel. And then moving into this idea of thriving on any given day, right? And so I think about it with 3 pillars, I guess, right? So the first is to get rooted, being really rooted in the present, right? In who you are and what makes you you, in that sense of, so core values, that sense of knowing what's inside. And there are all sorts of practices, even just being in your body and breathing, right? Can be, but it's almost developing that connection with self. Right? Self-awareness doesn't sound very sexy, but when we are self-aware, we kind of understand our truth on any given day.
Yeah.
Right. So there's getting rooted. The second is to be curious. So we're really good at judging, right? And wanting to fix and all the shoulds. But something happens when we get curious instead about what could be possible, or offering ourselves self-compassion instead of thinking that something isn't enough. And exploring. So even in your body, right? How many times, I don't know about you, but like your hip or your back or whatever, you're like, oh, that hurts, and I must have X, Y, and Z.
Oh yeah.
Right? But what if that's just our body saying, hey, knock, knock, like pay attention. I want you to know something. So to me, that's an example of being curious. And then the last is to practice aliveness.
Ooh.
Right?
Okay.
So this idea of giving yourself permission, and this is the absorbing, this is where, the allowing the deliciousness of things to fill you. So as opposed to moving so fast that we do the things, we check them off our list, right? So I sometimes talk about, when I'm thinking about aliveness, as it's kind of the opposite of self-care. And I'm like the person that doesn't like self-care, but here's why. I think that self-care is something that a lot of people put on their to-do list.
Yeah.
Go get the massage, do the thing, right? Check, check, check. But you go and you get the massage, and then you get in the car and you check your email, and all the good feelings of the massage are poof, gone. Right? You haven't absorbed it. And so it's allowing yourself to be filled by the fullness. And I mean, let's be real, aliveness is the full spectrum of life. Like there's the ups and rainbows and unicorns, and there's the storms. And so it's that element of being so in your life and allowing yourself to be filled up by it, that you can be jostled but unmoved, right? It's that sense of really being just so fully inhabiting of what you are and who you are. So Rooted, curious, and alive. To me, like those are the
great.
steps to really inhabiting your joy and becoming the sunrise in your pocket. There's certainly intuition, right, which comes into curiosity. There's all of these elements that I think the more you play with it, start to become ours. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was a great analogy. I like the 3 pillars because I feel like that's very tangible for people to just very easily be able to take in, if not all, at least one. What do you need more of?
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I think, right, there are different seasons, there are different days, different mornings or afternoons that we need a little bit more and a little, of one and a little bit more of something else. And so absolutely. And they're all interdependent. Right?
Exactly.
Because if you're being curious, if you're noticing sensations in your body, for example, it also means you're rooted, you're really present, right?
That's true.
Yeah. So there's a lot of interplay between them. And, but even the question, I mean, I will sometimes, if I'm feeling really stuck on something, and I can be an overthinker. It happens a lot that right? Like I often say I'm an Olympic level, like overthinker. Gold medal here, right? But that's where when I catch myself, I can pause and say, all right, what could I be curious about here? Right? Where could I be? How might I be curious instead of trying to like bulldoze and overthink? And so even just, those questions that we can ask ourselves can help us tap into on any given day. And so I really think about it as a practice to be kind to yourself and know, yeah.
That's great. I love that. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your book, why you wrote it, and what will people learn from it?
Yes. So Inhabit Your Joy, a book of nudges, is literally a book of nudges. And to get rooted, curious, and alive in your life so that you can connect with your most nourished and truest self. So I wrote this. I, for years, have thought about writing a book. And I'm that person who's like, I don't really know what I would write about. I mean, I have some things in my life, some experiences. I'm a cancer survivor. I've run 5 marathons. I'm, divorced and remarried, things. And we've learned, right? As in our aliveness, we learn.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of like forcing, I should write about this, or I should write about that. And at a certain point, I started really playing with, you know what? Like, it's really time for me to inhabit like who I am and what makes me me. And when I allowed that to be kind of the seed, and then the why was, I want to create a ripple. I really want, my word of the year is whoosh.
Ooh, that's a good word.
It is a good word, right? But I've been thinking a lot about creating ripples. And to me, the work that I do is I offer nudges to my clients. I offer nudges to my friends and family, right? I've always been that person that people would come to and they're like, just give me an Elena question. And it's like a little nudge, right? And the nudge to me is about helping you find your own clarity, your own answers, your own strength, your own power, your own light. And so when I got really focused on that why, it all became very easy. And I was like, oh, this is a book of nudges. Like, stop making it and need to be something fancy. So it is a book of 36 nudges.
Oh, I love that.
Divided into sections to be rooted, curious, and alive. And you could read it cover to cover, but really, I envision this book living on people's desks or nightstands and it being something that you just open and the nudge that you need finds you.
Like an affirmation card or an oracle deck or something like that, but just in the form of the question you need right now.
Yeah. And so
great idea.
Thank you. Awesome. So for each nudge, there's a little story or a little context, and then there's the practice. And 6 of the nudges are actually yin yoga shapes, right? So like a child's pose or a twist with a guided prompt to help you think about or breathe through. There's a nudge in I think it's Be Alive number 1, that is take a dance break. And it literally says something to the effect of find a favorite song, turn on the music and dance.
Oh, I love that.
So some are very, very quick. A few are more detailed journal prompts, kind of reflections, but they're really, my hope is, my intention with it is that people can allow the nudges to find them, and that it will be a book that helps people inhabit, really like own this sense of joy that lives inside of us, that we can choose every day. And I share in the introduction the story of, why the choice that I was given on one particular morning so many years ago. My daughter turns 18 this fall. So almost 18 years ago, when a doctor said to me, look, you can choose to grieve or you can choose to celebrate until the day you can't. And I went, oh, I choose option B.
I like B.
And that, when you were talking about the choice, right? Like that's the choice. We can overthink, we can catastrophize, we can do all those things, or we can just be in the moment. And so that's my hope, is that it creates a ripple of people choosing to inhabit their joy more and more every day.
That is amazing. I love that concept for your book. I love how you envision it. I love that you have an intention for it, for people who are purchasing it. I think that I know myself, like I want to be the best reader. I want to be able to pick up a book and read it from cover to cover. It doesn't always happen. You know what I mean? And so to have something where I can just pick a section and to just see what's that small message I need to hear today, that seems so much more digestible. And then you do have an option to read it from cover to cover if you want to, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. My husband is literally trying to read it cover to cover. Oh. Really? What? Because he's an engineer. It just makes me laugh.
There's no other way. It's the one. No,
right. But then it was funny. My daughter opened it and she was like, this is like being inside your brain. Oh, yeah. I went, I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but thank you. And you will laugh. I have to share. So my editor, I use the word delicious a lot. And it was in the book at the beginning and he's editing it and he kept trying to edit it out of me. And then he got to the nudge. I think it's the very last nudge, is the question, what would feel delicious today? And he went, oh, now I get it. This is who you are. It's like, yes, stop trying to undelicious me.
You're like, I am delicious in all of my ways.
It was like, delicious has to do with food. I'm like, except when it doesn't.
Exactly. Except when it's literally a way of living and experiencing life.
So
I love that. That's so funny.
I was like, you are not going to undelicious. Oh yeah.
Oh, good.
No
okay.
Way. Oh,
good.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, there's no way. I love it. Well, I honestly have loved this conversation so much. I am so grateful that you've taken the time to come on today and share so much love and knowledge with us all today.
Oh my goodness, Simona, thank you so much. And thank you for bringing the energy that you bring to the world and to this happiness conversation and just the realness of the stories and guests that you bring. Creates ripples just by being you. So thank you for that. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of it.
Of course. Thank you. And it's like a whoosh. I love that. Whoosh. I love it. Before we end, can you tell our listeners where they can find you? I will put the links in the show notes, but in case there's anyone on their phone that wants to find you really quick.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to my website, elenasonnino.com, and find all sorts of things, including a link to the book. I'm also on Instagram by my same name, Elena Sonnino. And those are the two places where I play the most.
Amazing. Elena, I have one last question for you before we end the episode today. And it's a question I've been asking for almost 3 years now to all of my guests. And I don't always get the same answer. I don't think I've ever gotten the same answer twice, but it's how can someone create a little more happiness in their day every day starting today?
To me, I mean, one of my favorite ways to create a little bit of happiness, that little moment, is honestly find a song, doesn't matter which song, and just dance. Dance around your kitchen, dance in your chair, dance around your office, dance in the bathroom, in the shower. Allow your body to be moved by the music and just dance.
I love that. Love that. Thank you again so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to today's episode on the podcast. I hope you learned so much. opened your perspective just a little bit and give yourself room to play, to grow, to enjoy those little moments. And I would love to know what you love the most about this episode. Let us know you're listening. Tag us both. Let us know. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.